The sound of my wife's laughter drifting from our bedroom at 7 a.m. wasn't what woke me. It was the smell of pancakes, the special recipe she claimed she'd forgotten how to make during our last 5 years of marriage. Buttermilk and vanilla, the same combination that used to fill our kitchen on lazy Sunday mornings when we still pretended to be happy. I lay there on the couch that had become my bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling I'd been meaning to fix for months. The same ceiling of the house I'd been paying for since 1999, through promotions and recessions, through my daughter's college tuition, and Sandra's shopping sprees. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now homeless in my own home, listening to my replacement being served breakfast in bed like some kind of king. "Derek, you're so funny." Sandra's voice carried through the thin walls, followed by more giggles that made my stomach turn. 3 weeks had passed since I'd walked into our bedroom at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, still in my termination meeting shock, and found her wrapped around him like a teenager. 3 weeks since I discovered their little secret, and they still had no idea I knew. They thought I was just the pathetic, recently unemployed husband who'd retreated into depression and denial, too broken to fight back. The truth was, I'd been fighting every day since, just not the way they expected. I heard bare feet padding across my hardwood floors I'd refinished with my own hands 2 summers ago, working weekends while Sandra complained about the dust. Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing my Stanford University t-shirt, the one Sandra gave me for my 50th birthday when she still remembered I existed. He was younger than me by at least 15 years, with the kind of confident swagger that comes from never having to worry about mortgage payments or grocery bills, never having to choose between fixing the water heater and taking your wife to dinner. "Morning, Jim," he said, not even attempting to hide his smirk as he reached for my favorite coffee mug, the ceramic one my daughter made in high school pottery class. "Sandra's making breakfast. You want some?" The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This man was offering me food in my own kitchen, cooked by my own wife, served in my daughter's handmade mug, the same daughter who hadn't called since the divorce rumors started spreading through our small town. I wanted to grab him by the throat and throw him out the front door I'd painted just last spring, after Sandra complained the old color made the house look dated and depressing. Instead, I smiled. The same smile I'd perfected in 25 years of marriage, through Sandra's mood swings and financial demands, through her criticism of my clothes, my job, my dreams, the smile that said I was harmless. "No thanks," I said quietly, watching his face for any sign that he sensed the storm brewing behind my calm exterior. "I'm not hungry." He shrugged and walked back toward the kitchen, calling out, "You're lost, buddy. These pancakes are incredible. You're lost, buddy." The words echoed in my head as I folded the thin blanket I'd been using, the scratchy emergency blanket from our camping gear, because God forbid I disturb the Egyptian cotton sheets I'd bought for our anniversary last year. 25 years of marriage, 2 decades of mortgage payments, countless sacrifices, and a lifetime of being the responsible one had led to this moment. Being called buddy by my wife's lover in my own living room while she sang in the shower I'd retiled just 6 months ago. But here's what Derek didn't know, what Sandra had somehow forgotten in her rush to play house with her new toy. I wasn't just the man who got fired after 15 years of loyal service. I wasn't just the sad husband sleeping on the couch where we used to watch movies together. I was the man who held every deed, every bank account, and every key to the life they thought they were stealing from me. As I heard them laughing over breakfast in my kitchen, I pulled out my phone and opened the contacts. It was time to make some calls. Important calls that would change everything. They thought they'd won. They thought I was broken. They had no idea their comfortable little fantasy was about to become their worst nightmare. 2 months earlier, I thought I knew what rock bottom looked like. I was wrong. It started on a Friday afternoon when my boss called me into his office with that look, the one every employee dreads. After 15 years of stellar performance reviews, of staying late and coming in weekends, of missing family dinners to close deals, I was suddenly redundant. Corporate restructuring, they said. Nothing personal, just business. The severance package was generous enough to soften the blow, but at 58, starting over felt like trying to climb Everest in flip-flops. I drove home in a daze, practicing how I'd break the news to Sandra. We'd figure it out together, I told myself. 25 years of marriage had to count for something. We'd tighten our belts, maybe finally take that trip to Europe we'd been postponing for decades, turn this setback into an opportunity. The house was quiet when I pulled into our driveway. The same driveway where I'd taught our daughter Emma to drive, where Sandra used to wait for me with a glass of wine after particularly tough days. I called out as I entered but got no response. Her car was in the garage, so I assumed she was out walking or shopping. Then I heard it, a low moan coming from upstairs, followed by Sandra's breathy laughter. Not the polite laugh she used at dinner parties, but something raw and genuine. A sound I hadn't heard from her in years, certainly not directed at me. My legs felt like concrete as I climbed the stairs, each step echoing in my chest. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I saw my wife of 25 years straddled over a man I'd never seen before. Her wedding ring, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy, glinted in the afternoon sunlight as her fingers traced his chest. "God, Derek, I feel like I'm 20 again," she whispered, and the intimacy in her voice hit me harder than any physical blow could have. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, watching the woman I'd built my entire adult life around with someone else. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was realizing she looked happier than I'd seen her in years. More alive, more herself. I backed away silently, grabbed my keys, and drove to the nearest bar. 3 whiskeys later, I was still trying to process what I'd witnessed. The bartender, a kind older woman named Ruth, eventually cut me off and called me a cab. "Whatever happened, honey," she said as she helped me into the taxi. "Don't make any decisions tonight. Big changes require a clear head." I spent that night in a cheap motel, staring at the ceiling and wondering how long it had been going on. The signs were all there now that I looked back. Sandra's sudden interest in yoga classes, her new lingerie that she claimed was just for her confidence, the way she'd started showering immediately after coming home from her book club. When I finally returned home the next morning, Sandra was making coffee in her bathrobe like nothing had happened. She looked surprised to see me. "Where were you?" "I was worried sick," she said, but her eyes didn't match her words. There was relief there, not concern. "Job hunting," I lied, watching her face carefully. "Long night." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry about the layoff. We'll get through this together," she said. But even as she spoke the supportive words, I could see her calculating, probably wondering how this would affect her lifestyle, her security. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to watch, learn, and plan. Because Sandra had made one crucial mistake in her rush to find happiness with someone else. She'd forgotten that the quiet, reliable husband she'd grown bored with was also the man who'd built our entire financial foundation, the man who'd insisted on keeping all the major assets in his name for tax purposes, the man who'd always handled the money while she handled the spending. Over the next 3 weeks, I played the role of the defeated, depressed husband perfectly. I let them think I was too broken to fight back, too devastated to notice what was happening right under my nose. Derek moved in gradually, first a toothbrush, then clothes, then his entire presence. And all the while, I was making phone calls. Quiet, careful phone calls to lawyers, real estate agents, and financial advisors, building my exit strategy while they built their fantasy on the foundation of my life's work. The transformation from broken husband to invisible ghost happened faster than I'd expected. By the second week of my depression, Derek wasn't even pretending to be a guest anymore. I'd wake up on the couch, my back screaming from the cheap cushions, to find him making breakfast in my kitchen, reading my newspaper, even answering my phone when it rang. Sandra would flutter around him like a teenager with her first boyfriend, making sure his coffee was perfect, his eggs just right, his every comfort attended to. The same woman who'd complained for years that I left dishes in the sink was now serving this man meals on my grandmother's china. "Jim," Derek said one morning, not looking up from the sports section I'd been reading for 20 years. "Sandra and I were thinking you might be more comfortable in the guest room. The couch can't be good for your back at your age." At your age. He was 32. I'd looked him up online. Derek Martinez, personal trainer at the gym where Sandra had started her fitness journey 6 months ago. No significant assets, drove a leased BMW, lived in a studio apartment across town until 3 weeks ago. "The couch is fine," I said quietly, pouring coffee into a mismatched mug since Derek was using my favorite one again. "I don't want to be any trouble." Sandra looked up from buttering his toast. The sourdough bread she claimed was too expensive when I'd asked for it last year, and gave me a pitying smile. "Oh, Jim, you're not trouble. We just want you to be comfortable while you're figuring things out. While you're figuring things out." As if my entire life had become a temporary inconvenience in their love story. as if the house I'd been paying for since she was still in college was now theirs to redesign around my presence. That afternoon, while they went to run errands together, probably shopping with my money, I made some calls of my own. The first was to Mike Morrison, my lawyer and golf buddy for 15 years. "Jim, I'm sorry to hear about Sandra," he said after I explained the situation. "But before you do anything drastic, let me ask you something important. Whose name is on the house?" "Mine. I bought it before we married, and we never bothered to change it." "What about the bank accounts?" "Joint checking, but all the major savings and investment accounts are in my name. I handled all the finances because Sandra said it stressed her out." There was a long pause. "Jim, you realize what this means, don't you?" I did, but hearing it from a lawyer made it real in a way that felt both terrifying and liberating. My next call was to Patricia Chen, our real estate agent from when we'd bought the house. "Pat, I need to ask you something hypothetically. If someone wanted to sell a house quickly, no contingencies, cash buyers only, how fast could it happen? In this market, with the right price, maybe 2 weeks. Are you and Sandra thinking of downsizing?" Something like that. The third call was the hardest. Emma answered on the fourth ring, her voice cautious. "Dad, is everything okay? Mom said you've been having a rough time since the job thing." My daughter, 23 years old, living in Seattle, building her own life. She had no idea her parents' marriage was disintegrating, no idea her mother was playing house with a man younger than she was. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just wanted to hear your voice." "Dad." She paused, and I could picture her frowning the way she did when she was little and trying to solve a puzzle. "Mom's been saying some things about you maybe needing help. Professional help." The blood in my veins turned to ice. Sandra was already building the narrative, painting me as the unstable one, the one who couldn't handle reality, setting up her defense for when everything came crashing down. "What kind of things, Emma?" "She said you've been acting strange since you lost your job. Paranoid, talking to yourself. She's worried about your mental health." I closed my eyes, feeling something crack inside my chest. 25 years of marriage, and Sandra was already rewriting history, making me the villain in her story, making me the crazy one, so that when Derek moved in permanently, when they took over my life completely, everyone would nod and say it was for the best. "Emma, I want you to remember something, okay? Whatever happens in the next few weeks, whatever you hear about me or your mother, remember that I love you more than anything in this world. And remember that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest." "Dad, you're scaring me." "Don't be scared, baby, just remember." That night I lay on the couch listening to them in my bedroom, not just the sounds of intimacy, but the quiet conversations afterward, the planning, the dreaming, the casual discussion of how to handle Jim going forward. "He'll snap out of it eventually," Sandra whispered. "And when he does, we'll deal with it. The house is half mine anyway, common law." She was wrong about the common law. Mike had confirmed that earlier. But hearing her casually dismiss 25 years of shared life, hearing her talk about me like I was an obstacle to be managed, something shifted inside me. The broken, depressed husband they thought they were manipulating, he was gone. In his place was someone colder, someone who'd spent decades being underestimated and was finally ready to use that to his advantage. I pulled out my phone and typed a text to Patricia. Not hypothetical anymore. "Let's talk tomorrow about listing the house." Then I deleted the message and typed another one to Mike. "I need to understand all my legal options, every single one." But as I was about to send it, I heard Sandra laugh. That genuine, happy laugh that used to be mine, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. I didn't just want justice anymore. I wanted them to feel exactly what they'd made me feel. I wanted them to understand what it meant to lose everything while the person you trusted most watched it happen. I wanted them to know what betrayal really cost. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. While Derek and Sandra slept until 10 a.m., in my bed, between my sheets, I was already 3 phone calls into dismantling the life they thought belonged to them. Patricia Chen met me at 7 a.m., her briefcase full of paperwork. "Jim, I've got 3 cash buyers. The Hendersons' offer is $15,000 under asking, but they can close in 10 days. No inspections, no contingencies." "Take it," I said without hesitation. "This seems very sudden. Are you certain Sandra is on board?" I met her eyes steadily. "The house is solely in my name. I'm the only one who can authorize the sale." The understanding that crossed Patricia's face told me she'd seen this scenario before. By noon, I'd signed the sale documents. By 2 p.m., I'd transferred our joint checking, all $47,000, into a new personal account Sandra couldn't access. By 4 p.m., I'd liquidated our investment portfolio and moved everything to a bank across the state. The hardest part was calling the utility companies. 23 years of the same accounts, the same phone number. Each cancellation felt like erasing my own history. But sometimes you have to burn the bridge to stop your enemies from crossing it. Derek was in my kitchen when I got home, making a sandwich with the expensive deli meat Sandra had started buying for him. The same premium turkey she'd always claimed was wasteful when I'd wanted it. He looked up with that familiar smirk. "How was job hunting today, champ? Any luck for us old-timers?" "Actually, yes," I said calmly, setting my keys down with deliberate care. "Very productive day." Something in my tone made his expression shift. Sandra appeared wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought for our 20th anniversary, the one she'd worn exactly once before, claiming it was too fancy. "Jim, we need to talk," she said in her budget discussion voice. "Derek and I think it might be best if you moved in with Emma for a while, just until you get back on your feet." "Move in with Emma," I repeated slowly. "In her studio apartment, so you two can have the house. We just think a change might help with your depression." I pulled out my phone and showed them the bank transfer confirmation. "Interesting timing, Sandra, because I've been thinking about changes too." Derek grabbed the phone, his face going pale. "What the hell is this? $47,000? Where did you move our money?" "Our money?" I laughed, lighter than I'd felt in months. "Derek, that was never your money. And Sandra, it was never really yours either." Derek stepped closer, and for a moment I thought he might try to intimidate me. But I wasn't the same man who'd been sleeping on his own couch for a month. "You pathetic old bastard," he snarled. "You think this changes anything? Sandra loves me, not you." "You're right, Derek. Money doesn't buy love." I smiled, and something in my expression made him step back. "But it does pay for houses and utilities. Speaking of which, you might want to start packing." Sandra's face went white. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the sale contract and set it on the counter. "I sold the house today. Cash sale, 10-day closing. New owners take possession next Friday." The silence was so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming. "You can't," Sandra whispered. "This is my home too." "No," I said quietly. "This was my home. You just lived in it." I picked up my keys and headed for the door. "Now it's someone else's problem." "Where are you going?" Derek called after me, his voice cracking slightly. I paused at the threshold and looked back at them, my wife of 25 years and the man she'd chosen to replace me, standing in the kitchen of a house that would no longer be theirs in 7 days. "I'm going to start over," I said, something I should have done years ago. As I walked to my truck, I could hear them arguing behind me, their voices rising in panic and recrimination. But for the first time in months, their problems were no longer mine to solve. The revenge was complete, but the real victory was just beginning. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the front porch of my new home, a modest ranch house on 12 acres in rural Montana, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. The silence here isn't the suffocating quiet of a house where I didn't belong. It's the peaceful stillness of a man who finally found where he fits. The transition wasn't easy. Those first weeks in a cheap motel while the house sale finalized were some of the loneliest of my life. But loneliness, I discovered, was different from humiliation. Loneliness was clean. It didn't taste like betrayal or sound like laughter that should have been mine. I bought this place with cash, something I could never have imagined doing while supporting Sandra's lifestyle. No mortgage, no debt, just clear ownership of something that was completely mine. The real estate agent, a weathered woman named Carol, didn't ask many questions about why a man my age was starting over in the middle of nowhere. Maybe she'd seen it before. Or maybe she just recognized the look of someone who needed space to heal. The house came with everything I needed: peace, privacy, and a workshop where I've started building furniture, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for a life that wasn't really living. 3 weeks after I left, Emma called me. Her voice was different, confused, hurt, but also clearer somehow. "Dad, Mom told me you had some kind of breakdown, that you sold the house without telling her and disappeared. But when I called Uncle Mike to ask about getting you help, he said something completely different." I'd been expecting this call, dreading it and anticipating it in equal measure. "What did Uncle Mike tell you, sweetheart?" He said Mom had been having an affair, that she moved her boyfriend into your house while you were sleeping on the couch. Is that true? The question hung in the mountain air, heavy with 23 years of my daughter's trust in her mother. I could have lied, could have played the noble victim who protected his wife's reputation even after she'd destroyed their marriage. That's probably what the old Jim would have done. Yes, Emma, it's true. The silence stretched between us, filled with her processing everything she thought she knew about her parents' marriage. Dad, I'm so sorry. I can't believe she... And then she told everyone you were unstable. Your mother made choices, honey. I made mine. Neither of us handled it perfectly, but we both have to live with the consequences. Where are you now? Are you okay? I looked out at the mountains, at the garden I'd started planting, at the life I'd built from the ashes of my old one. I'm more than okay, Emma. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. 2 months ago, I learned what happened to Sandra and Derek through the town's efficient gossip network. The house sale went through as scheduled. They'd assumed they had months to figure things out, maybe find a lawyer to challenge the sale. Instead, they had 1 week to pack 25 years of accumulated life into whatever they could carry. Derek disappeared first, of course. Amazing how quickly love fades when there's no financial security attached to it. Sandra tried to move in with her sister in Phoenix, but that lasted exactly 3 weeks before family loyalty hit its limit. She hired a lawyer to come after me, claiming emotional distress and seeking half of everything. Mike handled it with the efficiency of someone who'd been waiting 20 years to see justice served. The lawsuit was dismissed in less than a month. Premarital assets, separate accounts, and documented adultery make for a very short legal proceeding. I heard through Emma that Sandra is working retail now, living in a studio apartment across town from our old house. The same house where Derek once called me champ while drinking coffee from my daughter's handmade mug. I don't feel sorry for her. I don't feel angry anymore either. What I feel is something I hadn't experienced in decades. The profound peace that comes from being exactly where you belong, with exactly the life you chose to build. The sun is fully up now, and I need to get started on the day. There's a bookshelf to finish in the workshop, vegetables to tend in the garden, and later tonight a video call with Emma, who's planning her first visit next month. At 58, I learned something most people never discover. It's never too late to start over. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free. And sometimes when the people who thought they were taking everything from you realize what they actually lost, that's sweeter than any revenge you could have planned. If this story has touched you in some way, I'd be deeply grateful if you could hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support means the world to me as I continue sharing these stories of resilience and renewal. Thank you for listening.